I recently realized that I have made a couple $1 million with just these two hands. Meaning I didn't really exploit any employees down the line, and sure, I did have some help, but in many cases, if you calculate it, it would probably be about 1% of my total earnings coming from other people's work. And I find it kind of interesting because I was never really meant to be a successful business person. I was really bad at school, and the only thing that I liked was playing video games. I wasn't really into sports, which right now is a very important thing for me. And I wasn't really competitive. I was giving up very easily, very quickly. I wasn't even ambitious, I would say, for the most part. So sure, in the late 90s, when I started coding my very first Quake-related websites and learning web development and everything just clicked for me. Initially, I was thinking that maybe this could be a career, but I was still at this point imagining myself just going to work for somebody for those 8 hours every day, 5 days a week, and then going home and probably playing some video games. I think there are a few reasons why my life turned out to be this way, and I'm gonna share them with you. Not all of them, but I think most of them. So the main reason is that I met the right person, which is my wife, which is like my driving and motivating factor. Because even though we're both designers, we have complementary skills in many regards, meaning that she does some stuff way better than me and I do some stuff slightly better than her. And basically that combination kind of puts us in a spot where we could achieve most of what's necessary to succeed. But I think that a lot of that success came from curiosity, and I always was curious, even in 2002 and then later 2005 when I had my first startup success. I was just doing things to do things, to build things, to create something. It wasn't like money driven or motivated by, getting more money. No, I was more like, let's try to do this and see what happens. See if we can maybe create something cool out of it. And this is one of those things that I think also leads to me maybe trying to do things differently. I heard somebody say today that not many people in this industry, especially in my country, can have the luxury of doing design their own way and using their own methods. They're confined to some specific ways of doing things. So me saying stuff like you should push your own methodology onto clients is kind of talking from a position of privilege because I can do it. But the thing is that I started somewhere too, and I was trying to push my own methods and my own ideas as quickly as possible, without really thinking that it's gonna bring me some vast riches or, just a good position in life overall. So I was just kind of thinking that why are people doing things in this non-cool, kind of boring way? Why are you sending a design and annotating a design that looks like a term paper that's not engaging in any way, and it's also not made for humans because most real regular customers that are not designers don't understand most of it. So my whole thing from the beginning was stripping the complexity out of everything and trying to just kind of give my own twist on something. But this whole approach in my case, I think, is trying new things from like different perspectives, not really thinking about what could be beneficial, but in many cases kind of being mostly about creativity, mostly about trying to do something, even if it's gonna fail. And even if I'm not really good at it, I'm gonna try. And I did this with music for many years. We toured a lot of countries. I did it with writing. I wrote my very first book, a non-design book, by the way, many years ago, and it was actually pretty well received. I wrote poetry, I organized poetry slams, and I organized poetry events and exhibitions. And I was even featured in an international anthology among a person from my country. We represented the country, and later that lady actually won the Literary Nobel Prize, so that's kind of like a funny little side story here. But I was doing all these things and not really thinking about the end goal, the outcome. Like, what am I gonna do with that poetry skill if I want to be a designer? So the bottom line is this. I think that having a plan is definitely important. In my case, it probably would have ended up a lot better if I had a plan and probably faster. But also trying to do things on your own terms and trying to as quickly and just as quickly as possible try to figure out how can you contribute? How can you make this thing that you're doing better? Not just taking what somebody else is doing and adding your name underneath, which is what most people do nowadays. This is just boring and this is just kind of depressing. And yeah, I get it. Sometimes it's pushing a boundary just for the sake of pushing a boundary, but maybe in some cases it's actually good, because if it pushes back and hits you right in the face, then you know that maybe you went a little too far this time. When we did type framing a couple years ago for the first time, it was risky because it was a lot more work, but we realized that people from a big corporation that we were working with at the time as their supplier for Europe, they were in a hurry most of the time, and they weren't really happy about this whole back and forth process. Obviously, it gave them something to do, but it wasn't really necessarily what they wanted to do. So by stripping a part of that process and creating type framing so they can focus on just the copy or just the general structure, but without thinking about all the details, I think that kind of gave us an advantage. And then maybe some people started talking that they're this agency that are trying to do something completely different, some completely out of the box stuff. But obviously this could have failed. This could have failed completely. We could have been just kind of laughed out of the room. And maybe that's the thing. Maybe that's the characteristic, that I'm not afraid of being laughed out of the room. And I remember some interview of some musician that made it but previously played on the streets, that when he was still learning and trying new things, people were actually sometimes throwing half-drunk beer cans at him on the street because they were furious that he was ruining the songs that they like. And then I remember that I had an event like this once. We had a pretty bad day as a band, and it was definitely not our crowd. And we got booed off the stage, and things were thrown at us. Nothing really hard hitting, so I wasn't hurt. But I think this was an experience that I remember, but not for the reasons that you might think. Obviously, it's unpleasant to be booed or to be kind of, to get hit in the face with something from the audience, but it kind of gives you this, I don't know, outlook on stuff that at least you tried. And maybe the thing you did didn't work out, but you did get invited to the show and you did get paid for it anyway. So maybe let's try next time and let's see what happens. And next time was the complete opposite of it. So I am babbling a little bit, and I'll try to get more concise with these little messages in a bottle for you, but I think my main thing here is that I really, really appreciate creativity, even if you suck at something. Like, I'm a horrible singer and I used to sing in a band or rap or whatever for years because I thought I had something to say in music and then in poetry and so on and in books. So I kind of went around my limitations by using vocoders and by using some auto-tune like software, because I just can't sing well. Even if you have like a shitty singer like myself, but one that at least tries to say something original and different, then I think personally, in terms of the artistic value of it, I value this more than another singer from the US with like pitch perfect voice, but probably a little bit of auto-tune on it as well, who doesn't even write her own songs and has absolutely nothing to say, like most of them do. I prefer somebody who kind of hits false notes more often than not, but at least there is some message in there, some power in there, and some authenticity. And this all translates back to the design part or to running a business. You can be like everybody else, or you can try to master a specific set of techniques, But then you're gonna be like everybody else, and then the path to actually being, I don't know, rich in any way, like financially only, obviously, because not rich in spirit, is gonna be a tough way of building a company structure and managers on top of managers and all those layers. And then you realize that you wasted most of your life. And I quickly realized that I don't want to go this path. And we could have built a company up a couple of times. And one time that we tried it actually didn't work out that way. This company works best if it's small, agile, and doing shit our own way with our own custom methods. And we can charge a lot of money for it. And that's perfect. Also, it gives me the freedom to do things my way, to have a little bit more time to do my crazy sport adventures and to, I don't know, to even transform the idea of doing design in a certain way. Ultimately, the value is in honesty, in actually doing good shit, and trying to solve problems. And if you're thinking that you're solving a problem by giving somebody a website, then sorry, but it's not really that. There is like a lot more to it, and we can cover it some other time. But just try to maybe not be original for originality's sake, but try to be original in terms of not necessarily doing things you're not comfortable with that every other agency or every other freelancer is doing, but instead just try to do good shit, but your shit.